With me is Brooke Moffis to talk about how to beat the heat of summer gardening. Welcome, Brooke.
Hi, thanks for having me today, Julie.
Well, I was out yesterday working in the heat in our garden, so tell me, what are some ways, what I should have been doing to keep myself safe while working in my garden this summer?
Okay, one thing you want to do is slow down when you're working in the garden in the summer months. You know, you want to do your strenuous activity in the morning or the late evenings. I know it sounds like common sense, but you want to avoid the middle of the day whenever possible. Other things you can do is dress for the summer. Wear lightweight clothing, wear hats like this
the
with
broad
a wide brim. Yeah, I actually have one that's much wider than this, and it's not quite so pretty, but anyway, that's the one that I wear outside the garden. But you know, of course, the bigger the brim, the more it's going to protect your face, your shoulders, your neck, that type of thing.
And that one's it's kind of woven so you can get some air, some air flowing through your hat.
That's important with your clothes too. You want to wear lightweight clothes and light colored clothes. It can be very tempting when you're working outside to work in jeans, but try to get something that's, you know, a little bit lighter fabric. One thing I like to wear is those fishing shirts.
Oh, those nylon ones that are real
have
lightweight.
like the vent in the back. That allows a little bit of airflow. So that's another thing you can do is dress for the heat. Make sure you don't get too much sun. Don't go to the beach the day before and get sunburned and then go work out in your yard, because your body, when it's sunburned, can't cool itself. So another thing that you can do too is to not eat a lot of protein, because protein can actually make your body produce more heat. So that's something a lot of people wouldn't have thought of. You know, so don't eat a meal with eggs and bacon and then go outside at 11 a.m. and work out in your garden. Again, I know it sounds like common sense, but it's still,
or even just a big meal, especially with protein, but even just a big meal too.
Right. You also want to avoid alcoholic drinks too. You know, if it's a Saturday afternoon and that beer sounds really, really good in your
fridge.
While
you're mowing the grass?
Yeah,
no.
Exactly. No, not a good idea. Drink water instead and have your beer later that day. Also, if you're taking salt tablets, don't take them if you're going to be working outside unless a physician has told you that you need to be taking salt tablets. But that's another thing to be concerned with too.
Well, you said that you had symptoms of heat exhaustion one time. I know I get a headache afterwards when I've been really hot. What are some of the main symptoms of heat exhaustion?
Well, headache is one of the first symptoms. Dizziness, fainting, that can occur as well. Also, heavy sweating, especially if you feel cold and clammy. That's another sign that you're suffering from heat exhaustion. You can get very irritable and you can get confused. So
I get irritable when I get hot anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Weakness, vomiting, that can happen. A weak pulse can be another symptom. And another thing is, with heat exhaustion, your body temperature doesn't necessarily get hot. So if you're actually to take a thermometer and take that person's temperature, their body temperature may not actually increase. I know that sounds strange, but that's different with the heat stroke.
Okay, and when heat stroke, you actually stop sweating.
Right. Heat stroke, you get dry, hot skin and you don't sweat. As soon as that happens, you need to get out of the sun. You can also, you know, have confusion with that one too. You can get a rapid, strong pulse and your body temperature will go up drastically.
Right. So what are some ways that we can, besides taking care of ourselves, what are some ways that we can maintain our garden? While we're taking care of ourselves, how can we take care of our plants when it's so hot?
Well, when it's, you know, when it's this hot, one thing that you can do is follow the shade around your yard. So, you know, work on one side of your house that's shaded in the morning, and then as the day goes on, go around to the other side of the house and work there where it's shaded. Another thing you can do is have a shade garden too. So great way to, you know, get out of the heat but still garden. Some plants that you can grow are caladiums, you know, a lot of tropical plants you can grow in the shade, bromeliads too. And I love these shade plants because they provide a lot of color in the landscape.
Yeah, caladiums are great. When it's really hot, I mean, I know some things you can grow in Florida all year long and some you can't. What are some plants that we can grow in the summer when it's so hot?
Okay, one thing is portulaca. That one is very heat tolerant. It's very tolerant of dry conditions. Salvias are great too, and salvias come in all different sizes, all different colors. You know, you see the small red one that everyone thinks of as a bedding plant. That one can get maybe 6 inches tall. Then you have ones that can get maybe 6 feet tall. You know, there's the Mexican sage. One of my favorite Mexican sage is a cultivar called Santa Barbara's, and it gets these violet blooms on it and sea green foliage. Very, very beautiful.
And a lot of the salvias are butterfly friendly,
yes,
right?
Definitely. And those butterflies need nectar during the summer months.
They need to eat all year long.
Exactly.
Do salvia attract hummingbirds too?
They can, especially the red. Red tubular flowers attract hummingbirds.
We haven't had many hummingbirds in our garden this year. So how can we figure out which other plants? Is there some place, like a website I can go to look for plants that can take the heat?
You know, one of the best things to do is to visit your local county extension office, you know, Sumter County for me, Lake County for you. And, you know, those residents can attend gardening classes there or even speak to master gardeners in the plant clinic to see what plants they should grow in heat, you know, heat conditions. There's also something out there called like a heat index map, or I guess you could say a heat zone map. And it came out in the early 90s. And, you know, you remember the hardiness zone map?
Yeah, I was
that
going to
tells
say,
you,
so they're different.
Right. The hardiness zone is the lowest temperature that plant can take. That's great if you want to see if a plant can survive a freeze in the area. The heat one is the opposite. Can it tolerate the amounts of heat? The only thing is this hasn't really been in a lot of publications yet. So as time goes on, we'll have a heat index where people can see the coldest temperature a plant can take and they can see the hottest temperature a plant can take.
Where would somebody go to find that?
You can actually go online. American Horticulture Society is the one that put that heat index map out.
Okay. So we've got our plants, we've got the right plants chosen. Do we need to fertilize them as much or less during the summer?
If a plant is actively growing and it's getting enough water, you should fertilize during the summer months. As a general rule, you want to fertilize in March, July, September with a slow release fertilizer. If we're in a drought situation and those plants are really stressed out, especially turf grass, you may want to refrain from fertilizing, because that when you fertilize, it's, you know, telling that plant to, or it's giving that plant the nutrients it needs to push out new growth. And a plant that's drought stressed, you know, maybe can't cope with all that growth.
So is slow release fertilizer, is that usually the granular, or does it also come in liquid?
Well, slow release fertilizer, it usually comes in a prill. And what a prill is, it's like a small little ball. Have you ever seen when you're working with fertilizers in your garden, like a bright color, like it'll be a bright pink or it'll be, you know, a bright yellow? That's your slow release fertilizer. And so that coating actually slow releases that fertilizer to that plant over time, you know, depending on the amount of water, depending on the amount of temperature.
And speaking of water, since it doesn't seem like it's ever going to rain much.
I know, we might be in for it this year.
How often should people be watering their landscape plants?
Best thing to do is get a rain gauge, especially during the summer months. You know, we get those afternoon thunderstorms and showers, so you just want to make sure that you're getting at least an inch a week, if possible. Another thing that you can do is look for indicator plants. Azaleas are one of the first plants to wilt when we have a drought, so if you have an azalea in your yard, when that thing starts wilting, it's a good idea to get out there and water your landscape.
And you can get a rain gauge at your local hardware store, garden center, you know.
Right, that's correct.
Okay.
And they can range in price. You can get a really pretty one for 20, 30 bucks. You can get a real cheap one for a couple bucks.
We got the cheap plastic ones.
Yeah, yeah, I do too.
So one last question about vegetables. What kind of vegetables can we plant this time of year?
Okay, well, we typically do vegetable gardens in the cooler months in Florida. We do it over the fall, do it through the spring, but you can get by with some vegetables in the summer. Cherry tomatoes is one. You want to look for cultivars like Heat Wave and Tropic if you can find those. Eggplant you can grow through the summer. Sweet potatoes. And some peas you can grow through the summer too.
Okra you can grow in the summer too,
Oh
right?
yes, okra is great to grow in the summer, yes.
So, okay. And any other problems that you might want to tell us about?
Disease and insects can be a problem in the summer months, especially if we are getting frequent afternoon showers. Insects and disease love hot temperatures. They love humidity. So it's a good idea to get out there into your landscape, scout the landscape. Do you ever just piddle in your yard where you go out there and you've worked out there for an hour but it looks like you haven't done anything?
Yes.
Well, I do that sometimes too, but that's a great time to actually monitor those plant leaves. If you see any spots, if you see any insect pests, pick those leaves off, stick them in a baggie, and take them to your county extension office. We can tell you how to treat it if you don't know.
Great. Well, thank you, Brooke. That's been a lot of great hints to help us beat the heat. Thank you.
Thanks, Joy.